A Fox News alert, President Trump gathering his National Security Council at the White House today as he doubles down on his campaign promise, making the world a safer place after the epic takedown of Iran's major nuclear sites. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt joins us now. Caroline, I know the president seems very pleased by the results so far. What do we know about the effectiveness of the attack that's been relayed to you?
The president is pleased, the country is pleased, and frankly, Brian, the whole world should be pleased with the courageous action that President Trump and our United States military took on Saturday night. I want to thank, and the president wants to thank, the brave pilots who flew nearly 40 hours and more than 7,000 miles from the middle of America to the Middle East to conduct this highly successful and complex precision strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. This is an operation that presidents of the past have dreamed about, but no president had the guts to actually do it. But President Trump did, to take away this imminent threat, not just to the state of Israel, but to the United States and the rest of the world. So the country is a safer place today because of the president's bold action, and he has prevented a nuclear conflict. He has prevented a rogue radical regime from obtaining a nuclear bomb and threatening our people.
So I know the president's very decisive, but he also likes listening to all angles. And he's used to Democrats fighting against him. How much harder was the decision when you have people like Steve Bannon coming over for lunch saying don't do it, Marjorie Taylor Greene saying don't do it, and other voices like that? How did the president digest all that, knowing these people weren't necessarily against him, they're against pending action he more than likely was going to take?
One of the great things that makes President Trump a great leader is his ability to listen to people with different perspectives, but then ultimately make a decision based on his own instinct and the intelligence that he saw. And he saw, based on U.S. intelligence, that Iran is just weeks away from obtaining a nuclear weapon. And President Trump has been saying his entire life, not just as a presidential candidate or as president of the United States twice, but also as a private citizen, that Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. And that's something that leaders around this world and on both sides of the political aisle agree with. Again, presidents dating back to Democrat Bill Clinton have said that Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon, but none of them had the courage to actually do something about it, and President Trump did. And nobody knows what it means to accomplish peace through strength better than President Trump. He is the one who came up with that motto and that foreign policy doctrine, and he successfully implemented it in his first term. And this is one of many steps he is taking to successfully implement peace in his second term. The president wants to see a peaceful and prosperous Middle East. He talked about that extensively when we took that historic trip to Saudi Arabia, and he talked about how the Iranian terrorist regime was bringing down the rest of the region, and our Gulf partners and allies agree with that sentiment. So the president wants peace. Sometimes you have to use strength to achieve it, and he's not afraid to use strength. And as Saturday night proved, the United States has the best and most lethal fighting force in the history of the world, and we can use it if we must.
So the president tweeted out the next day, and I agree with you, by the way, and I think most everyone watching does, says it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? Does he think we should do that? Is he asking the Iranian people to do that? What's he saying there?
The president believes the Iranian people can control their own destiny. And what he said last night makes complete sense. If the Iranian regime refuses to come to a peaceful diplomatic solution, which the president is still interested in engaging in, by the way, why shouldn't the Iranian people take away the power of this incredibly violent regime that has been suppressing them for decades? And so our posture has not changed. Our military posture has not changed. These were decisive precision strikes that were successful on Saturday evening. But the president is just simply raising a good question that many people around the world are asking.
So let's go to the border, if we can, and how that relates to the reprisals that Iran promises. One of the things they said was, you know, Donald Trump, gambler Donald Trump can start a war, we'll finish it. Well, could it be through a sleeper cell here? Well, they certainly have the numbers. It turns out over the last 4 years, there's been over 1,500 Iranians coming through our southern border, 729 qualified for release. Your reactions to the American people concerned about a possible sleeper cell reprisal here?
President Trump has no greater responsibility than protecting the homeland. And look at what he has done over the past several months to do that. He has done more than any president in American history to secure our border, and the largest mass deportation operation of illegal criminals, many of them known terrorists that Joe Biden led into this country, are being removed every day. I spoke to our Secretary of Homeland Security this morning. She held a call with governors across the country, and the Department of Homeland Security is actively engaged with our state and local law enforcement partners to protect the American people. That is the president's #1 priority in all of this, and that's ultimately what led him to make the decision to launch this strike on Saturday night, to protect our homeland from threats abroad, and we will continue to protect our homeland from threats here at home.
Karoline, but no specific threat yet in any city or any state or any building?
Not that I'm tracking, Brian, but I can assure you the Department of Homeland Security is monitoring this situation very closely.
So as this operation takes place, Democrats said they were not told about it. They were left in the dark, and they said usually there's bipartisan calls for this, and they didn't know about it. Here is Republican Thomas Massie.
We haven't been briefed. They should have called us all back. And frankly, we should have debated this war powers resolution that Ro Khanna and I offered instead of staying on vacation and doing fundraisers and saying, oh, well, the president's got this under control. We're going to cede our constitutional authority.
Should you have called everybody back?
First of all, we did make bipartisan calls. Thomas Massie and the Democrats, he should be a Democrat because he's more aligned with them than with the Republican Party. We're given notice. The White House made calls to congressional leadership. They were bipartisan calls. In fact, Hakeem Jeffries couldn't be reached. We tried him before the strike, and he didn't pick up the phone, but he was briefed after, as well as Chuck Schumer was briefed prior to the strike. So this notion that CNN ran with at the White House did not give a heads up to Democrats is just completely false. In fact, both Senator Schumer's office and CNN had to retract that story last night because it was a blatant lie, and we showed them the timestamps from those phone calls. But I want to add something to Thomas Massie's false points. The White House was not obligated to call anyone because the president was acting within his legal authority under Article 2 of the Constitution as Commander-in-Chief of the President of the United States. We gave these calls as a courtesy, and the Democrats are lying about this because they can't talk about the truth of the success of that operation and the success of our United States military and the success of this president and this administration in doing something that past administrations, Democrats too, have only dreamed about.
Yeah, but President Obama did not ask for permission to bomb Libya in 2011.
That's right.
Finally, I know you guys are going over to NATO. You're going to go one day later. It's going to be on Tuesday. So far, our NATO allies are looking for de-escalation. What do you want to hear from them about what we did over the weekend?
That's right. The president will be taking off for NATO tomorrow morning, and one of the main topics of discussion will be that 5% threshold that our NATO allies have to hit. The president has been calling on our NATO allies to do more for quite some time. He got them to step up and do more in his first term, and you'll hear the president talk about that on this next historic trip to Europe. You
want them spending 5%, right? 5%
right.
of their GDP on defense. Yes. Some of them just got to 2%. Have you gotten any pushback on that?
Not so far, not that we've heard, and the president has been adamant. And our NATO allies, to their credit, heeded the president's strong call in his first term, and we expect them to do it this time around as well.
I know it's one of those very tense times that you're always going to remember. And thanks so much for letting us know what's happening from inside the White House. Karoline Leavitt, thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. And now they're going to head overseas, over to The Hague.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.